14 years old, wrapped in fabric your bloodline bled coin to afford. Fresh petals threaded through your hair by trembling maternal fingers. Your father observes you the way men observe livestock before auction. Your brother's fingers tap impatiently against his thigh, eager to close uncomfortable bargains. The word blessing floats through the room like incense. They say the goddess smiles on this moment. What they don't say is why the elder women standing near the ritual chamber won't let their eyes meet yours. Before tonight's sun bleeds into the Euphrates, a faceless man will appraise what your flesh is worth. And somehow this counts as mercy. The temple entrance burns gold beneath afternoon light. The ziggurat claws upward, a stone ladder scraping at heaven's underbelly. Close enough to inhale it now, incense mingles with boiled grain and ash. Priests drift like phantoms through shadowed corridors. Enslaved hands drag offerings too heavy for their frames. And somewhere behind perfume-drenched fabric, a ceremony breathes waiting. A priest presses a woven rope crown into your palms. Another etches your name into wet clay. On the altar, a single silver coin rests in position, patient as death. Minutes from now, you'll grasp why your parents delivered you here. Minutes from now, you'll understand why temple doors bolt from within. Minutes from now, you'll discover this ritual was never about faith. It was always about purchase. This isn't legend. This was Babylon, a machinery so normalized that ancient chroniclers documented it without flinching, so disturbing that modern scholars still debate whether the truth is too poisonous to swallow whole. By the time the first stranger approaches the girl beneath the ziggurat's cold shadow, you'll comprehend the authentic purpose behind Babylon's most hallowed ritual, and why civilization tried to bury it beneath sand. If the hidden violence of forgotten epics pulls at you, subscribe to Grimoryx, press that like button, and when you reach the moment that unsettles your bones, tell me where you're watching from. Let's descend. Her name is Beltani, and here her story splits open. Picture yourself as Beltani now, standing at Ishtar's threshold. Other girls surround you, some older, some younger. Some wear composure like armor, others look ready to dissolve into tile. They hand you thin cord, coiled and soft, braided from plant fiber. A crown for the holy, the woman beside you murmurs. They wrap it around your skull, a crown that constricts rather than illuminates. You smile because everyone else smiles. You perform what's expected. They offer barley cakes, sweet beer in clay cups. You bow. You memorize hymns, your voice swallowed by the collective chant. Herodotus described it without poetry: women seated, rope crowns pressed tight, men selecting as they wandered past. Scholars argue he misunderstood. The tablets don't argue. They catalog names, payments, silver, grain. They were carved to count. But here's what no historian admits. This is where the narrative stops resembling devotion and starts resembling commerce. Beltani learns the machinery quickly. First comes training, music, movement, perfume application, the art of lowering your gaze so refusal transforms into invitation. A woman named Iltani demonstrates how to roll cosmetic stone across skin until oil sheens the surface. An ink-stained boy inscribes her name on clay. Kadištu, he whispers, as if the word is both title and noose. Priests explain theology in patient tones. Pleasing Ishtar pleases the city. Pleasing the city secures harvests, births, trade routes. The logic gleams, the consequences rot. If you were Beltani, would you name this devotion or captivity? It's simple to call the Kadištu priestesses. They receive training. They memorize sacred verses pressed into clay. They wear unstained linen. They stand within holy architecture. From the exterior, it resembles status. Law supports that performance. The law protects her on parchment, property, wages, legal recognition. But the tablet never records consent, and it never records departure. On paper, she belongs to no man. In practice, she belongs to the temple. For one brief moment, Beltani believed this might offer elevation, a path upward like the priestesses whose names were immortalized in clay. Perhaps the temple would shield her. Perhaps she could flourish here. That hope suffocated fast, but paper only tells fragments. What follows next, even the tablets refuse to describe. At night, when lanterns ignite and Babylon sinks into low, humming quiet, the inner court transforms. Outer doors seal shut, yet men still enter, merchants with obscured faces, soldiers returned from campaigns, travelers carrying silver, grain, foreign cloth from distant roads. They don't linger, they pay. Priests guide them behind low curtains where the Kadištu wait in arranged positions. Coins pass between palms, names get recorded, portions set aside for sacrifice. Everything else feeds temple storage. This is where devotion becomes transaction. Beltani watches an older woman exit the enclosure, moving carefully, practiced, a coin resting in her lap and eyes trained not to settle anywhere too long. No one shames her. No one mocks her. The city respects her for having served. Yet her life has already narrowed to a hallway with no exit. She will not marry as other women marry. She will not raise children inside a household bearing her name. Her future has been shaped silently without a single spoken verdict. Some Kadištu call this position. Others call it survival. Beltani calls it order. Her days aren't chosen, they're assigned. Bells wake her. Rations dictate meals. Names spoken by priests decide when she serves. No one threatens her. No one physically restrains her. Still, nothing belongs to her, not even time. A woman who cannot leave isn't staying by choice. At night, lying on her narrow mat, Beltani thinks of wet barley's smell, of her mother's hands smoothing her hair, of the rope crown still resting lightly against her temples. She wonders how long perfume can mask exhaustion. The tablets offer no answer. They simply stop recording names, and then there's another ritual. Once yearly, during the New Year festival, the temple prepares a sacred marriage meant to secure the city's future. It's dressed in hymns and symbols spoken of as union and blessing. Inside the walls, it feels less like celebration, more like proof that the goddess's favor has been purchased again. The temple does not accept refusal. Beltani is still new enough to believe the goddess might be gentle. The hymns speak of gardens and rain, of love that nourishes land. But priests speak of service and men speak of payment. The purpose is never hidden. The city must be fed, the city must endure. As dusk settles, Beltani lifts the rope crown once more. Inner court doors close, rugs are laid out, records straightened. Girls adjust their hair while chants rise, old and insistent. Something shifts behind a curtain. The air tightens. One more name will be taken, one more entry added, one more night absorbed into memory. A priest murmurs words she barely hears. Incense floods her lungs. A coin waits somewhere beyond her sight. A narrow rope path marks the ground, guiding where she must sit. A man will choose. When the curtain trembles, Beltani understands the choice was decided long before she arrived here. The fabric parts, falls shut behind the stranger. The rope crown digs into her palms as she grips it, suddenly aware of its meaning. The priests call it sacred. The older Kadištu know better. Once it touches your hair, the temple claims more of you than your family ever could. Footsteps cross tiled floor, sandals scrape clay. The man is not cruel. He is ordinary, following a custom older than either of them. He hesitates. Then the silver falls. It lands in Beltani's lap with a sound too small for what it seals. The priest exhales. The scribe presses a mark into clay. The coin doesn't need to be large, it only needs to be given. And because it was given, it cannot be refused. Tradition says she must rise. And here, tradition is law. This moment is not the end, it is the entry point. Once the coin has fallen, nothing needs explaining. The priest gestures forward. The stranger walks ahead. Beltani's knees shake, but her feet obey. The path has already been decided for her. The ritual chamber is narrow, painted walls glowing softly under lamplight. Incense hangs thick in the air, sweet and suffocating. Small bells fixed to the doorway chime as she crosses the threshold, meant to summon the goddess, but sounding instead like a signal that another obligation has begun. No one speaks to her. No one explains what comes next. The silence is deliberate. This system does not rely on cruelty. It relies on age, repetition, and the confidence that no one will interrupt what has always been done. The ritual is older than the city's walls. It does not pause for doubt. It does not adjust for fear. Beltani steps inside. The curtain falls and Babylon continues without her. In the months that follow, temple life settles into rhythm that leaves no room for questions. Morning hymns, oil baths, lessons in music, scent, composure. Inside the walls, the Kadištu are praised as sacred. Outside, they are spoken of in lower voices. They move between reverence and use without ever fully belonging to either world. Some of the older women whisper when priests are gone. Ishtar owns us, one mutters, another shakes her head. The temple does, Ishtar only signs off. Beltani does not laugh. The temple is a city within a city. Storerooms stacked high with grain, jars sealed with silver, names pressed into clay and filed away. And the Kadištu move through it all as essential and unnoticed as the machinery itself. The law recognizes them, grants privileges. Lists protections, it does not grant departure. One night, Iltani, the woman who trained her, sits beside Beltani on the terrace, moonlight flattening the world into pale shapes. You understand it now, Iltani says quietly. How this place works. Beltani nods. Do you still think we are priestesses? Beltani hesitates. What else would we be? Iltani smiles, but it's a tired expression, worn smooth by years of answers that led nowhere. Necessary, she says, necessary to the temple. Necessary to men who come here and leave lighter. Necessary enough to keep, never enough to release. A voice calls from below. Another offering has arrived. The rope crown waits on its hook. Duty resumes. As seasons turn, the temple becomes familiar in ways Beltani never wanted. She recognizes footsteps by sound alone. She knows which merchants bring wine, which soldiers bring impatience, which offerings carry the sharp smell of foreign roads. She knows the sound of coins striking clay bowls, and how quickly each one is counted, sealed, stored. An accountant once tells her she brings good fortune. She looks past him at the overflowing storerooms and understands what that praise truly means. What weighs on her most is not the ritual itself, which becomes numbing in its repetition, but the hours afterward. When the incense thins, the chants fade, and the city's noise returns beyond the walls. That is when the temple feels smallest. That is when the future disappears. No one here speaks of later years. Names are recorded, then one day they are not. Older women vanish quietly, their mats are folded, their space is filled. When Beltani asks where they go, Iltani touches her hair gently and says to the goddess. Her eyes do not agree. It is near harvest season when a new marking appears on the temple calendar. The sacred marriage approaches, a ritual meant to bind the land's prosperity to divine favor. The public will see hymns, flowers, processions. Inside the temple, preparations are made with careful precision. The Kadištu do not perform the rite, they prepare it. And for the first time, Beltani's name is called. A bowl of scented oil is placed in her hands, her hair is arranged. The rope crown is adjusted. The air in the room feels heavier, as if the walls are listening. Even Iltani watches without speaking. What must I do? Beltani asks. The priest answers calmly without urgency or threat, what the goddess requires. The inner chamber is dim, lit by only a few lamps. Stone lions stare from the walls. A platform stands at the center, draped in cloth reserved for the highest rites of state and faith. Beltani's breath tightens. She has learned enough to recognize danger even when it wears sacred language. Footsteps echo beyond the doorway. Someone important is approaching. And in that moment, Beltani understands whatever lies beyond the next curtain will shape the rest of her life. Not through violence, but through permanence. The chant begins. The lamps burn lower. The curtain stirs and Beltani steps forward. She has prepared lamps before. She has prepared rooms. Tonight, she is being prepared. The high priestess stands at the chamber's center, draped in white linen edged with gold. She looks less like a woman than a symbol, composed, elevated, distant. Only the faint tremor in her hands betrays the truth. Even she feels the weight of this night. The altar is carved with lions, Ishtar's beasts, their stone jaws forever open. She tips the bowl. Oil spreads across the surface, dark and reflective, catching the lamplight like a held breath. Footsteps approach behind her. Slow, deliberate. The man chosen to stand in for the divine enters the chamber. King or noble, it no longer matters. His presence shifts the room. Beltani keeps her eyes lowered just as she was taught, but she feels his gaze settle like weight on her skin. The priests circle them. The chant deepens. The chamber seems to close in, walls pressing closer than before. Then a voice speaks. Calm, certain, final, tonight you serve the goddess in body and in symbol. The land depends on this. The city depends on this. A sentence so old it sounds unquestionable. A sentence that leaves no room for refusal. Beltani lowers her eyes, and the ritual begins. What happens next was never written down. The temple did not record details meant to be sealed. Only fragments survive, hymns that speak of prepared beds praising union and fertility. But everything in Beltani's life shifts after that night. The next morning, the high priestess embraces her, not with warmth but with approval. Priests nod as they pass. A scribe adds a mark beside her name on a tablet she cannot read. Even Iltani looks at her differently now, with recognition edged by pity. You have seen the heart of the temple, Iltani whispers, and the temple has seen you. No explanation follows, none is needed. Once certain thresholds are crossed, there is no return. Then one day, her name is no longer called. There is no dismissal, no ceremony, no farewell. Her entries in the tablet thin, then stop. This is how Kadištu disappear, not through violence, not through scandal, but through quiet erasure. The records show small notations, duties fulfilled, offerings prepared, festivals served, then nothing. The temple has taken what it required, and it moves on. This is how countless lives ended inside Ishtar's walls, not with drama but with absence. Scholars argue because argument is safer than conclusion. The tablets do not argue. They show a system that functioned smoothly, efficiently, by consuming women without noise. Payments recorded, roles assigned, rituals regulated, bodies folded into law and ledger. Some women entered willingly. Others were given by families with no other options. A few gained status. Most faded without trace. Beltani lived in the middle, shaped by a system that elevated her just enough to make her useful, then swallowed her whole. History does not preserve voices like hers. The temple recorded grain and silver, not fear, not hope, not regret. And yet the silence around her name speaks clearly. It tells us she was never meant to be remembered, only counted. It tells us why later generations tried to bury these rituals beneath metaphor and denial. Not because they were small, but because they revealed too much. The temple is gone now, the ziggurat reduced to dust, the chants silenced. The lions broken beneath sand, but the questions remain. What did Beltani believe in the end? Did she still trust the goddess? Did she hope for escape, or did she learn to stop hoping at all? History will never answer. The tablets do not record longing, they record transactions. And that is how Beltani remains, a name briefly pressed into clay, a life consumed by a system that called itself sacred, and a reminder that even the brightest temples can cast the darkest shadows. If you want to pay tribute to Beltani and to the countless women history only counted, never remembered, leave her name in the comments.